Does spiritual fitness require physical fitness? Do we need to eat organically and exercise and do yoga to get closer to God, to feel closer to our true sense of self? We're going to explore these questions today on Third Eyesight. My name is Juan Francisco, and I'm a psychic medium and tarot card reader. I've always been curious about the supernatural, the paranormal, and psychic abilities, and I'm here to share my stories and interview folks who want to share their own stories with us. Let's get to it. Hey everybody. So today's topic is going to be on spiritual fitness and how that relates to physical fitness and vice versa. And I'm going to get some opinions that may disagree with me listening to this podcast episode, and that's okay. If you're happy for you, I'm happy for you. That's the way I'm trying to live my life now. Before I get to that, though, I want to share something and get vulnerable with you all. I shared this on Instagram on Tuesday, January 16th, and I've shared something like this before on social media, and it's about not being in the right headspace to do readings. I have not been in the right headspace this week, so I decided to move and or cancel readings that I had with people for the next 2 weeks. And I think it's something that psychics don't often talk about, and I'm sharing it because I think it's important and because it also humanizes me. But yeah, I feel like when I'm not in the right headspace and I'm so distracted by something in life, it depends on what it is. Sometimes I can work right through it, but other times I know that it's going to distract me from the reading I'm doing because I'm so in my emotions and so in my anxiety. And I think it's my responsibility to be aware of that, be conscious of it, and tell a sitter, a client, hey, I'm not going to show up my best for you, and I want to be my best for you. So let's move your reading, and I'm so sorry. And if you want a refund, I can do that too. So that's what I did with 2 or 3 clients. And I feel bad. I do feel bad, but I also want to be my best in readings. And there's nothing worse than knowing you are not going to be great and you do it anyways. It's good to be courageous and be brave and just do the thing. But when it comes to something so sensitive as people's loved ones, grief, wanting to get answers about a situation that may be troubling you for a card reading, I am not the type to play around with that and disrespect what the client is bringing to a reading by bringing not all of myself to the reading. So, PSA, no readings for the next 2 weeks for me as I sort things out in my life right now, just in an area of my life. And just let this be a message to you all that if you need to pause and stop, it's okay to pause and stop, especially if you're in a capacity of taking care of other people. Of course, caregiving is one thing. That's not what I mean. Not physically taking care of other people, because that is a necessity. But if you're in the capacity of serving other people in consolation with them or counseling them, outside of being a psychologist, therapist, I'm going down a rabbit hole now on this topic, but I think you know what I mean. If you can afford, if you are able to take time for yourself in a way that's safe for your clients, as well as safe for you, do it if you can. I think it's so important to know ourselves that way. I mean, I have a therapist, and I'm sure that he works through annoyances and distractions of the day and things that are happening, and he has a session with me. He just works through it. So I've sometimes wondered what it's like to be a psychologist or therapist, and you're going through your own stuff, and they're doing the Lord's work, therapists and psychologists, most of them at least. Mine is. So anyways, let's get on to the topic of today's podcast. Something that I grew up hearing here and there in my life was the idea of being physically fit and eating well, eating organically, or eating only healthy foods, which for the sake of this episode, I'm defining healthy foods, not definitely defining it as this, but healthy foods being like vegetables, proteins, clean grains, whole wheat bread, I think you know what I mean by healthy food, but I am the first to acknowledge that the word healthy is very subjective when it comes to some things. But I just want to tell you, when I say healthy foods in this podcast episode, that's what I mean. Shopping at Whole Foods, shopping organically, no high fructose corn syrup, no sugar, extra sugars at least, no unhealthy fats, quote unquote, a clean lifestyle physically. That is a way to get spiritually pure, or to get closer to your spiritual sense of well-being. That is one way. And as I've gotten older, and most of you who have listened to my podcast for a very long time know that I struggle with body image dysmorphia and body image issues, which I am proud to report are improving in the past year. And I am definitely at a place, and this is something I especially want to say as I step into this topic of the podcast, that I'm coming at this topic from the experience of having really struggled with my body image. I have, gone to some extreme measures, and to some extent, to make sure that I look perfect, quote unquote, that I feel perfect, that I look hot. I was teased as a kid for being a little overweight by students, classmates rather. And I also grew up, watching pornography was my first exposure to gay men interacting with each other the way that at all, period. And so I associated certain types of bodies of gay men, or men having sex with men, to that's what gay men want. That's what being gay must mean. So there's so much to the story, and I can't believe I just said that, but whatever. I'm an open book most of the time. It's the truth. It's the truth. And so many other people go through that too. Pornography is, unfortunately, it can be such a big source of what does it mean to be a sexual adult to a very young person who is discovering this pornography, right? And especially as a gay kid, I felt like there was no one around my age to talk to about being gay. And I couldn't feel safe talking about being gay or being myself, which is why I was in the closet and tried to pray my own gay away for so many years. So you see, my body image issues are so intertwined with how I loved myself. And so when it comes to spirituality and physical fitness, just know that I am coming at this topic from this life experience, okay? Because I have some, I don't know if to call it bias, but I have some, my experience dictates my opinion on this topic. I'll put it that way. So I grew up with this idea that to be spiritually healthy, part of being spiritually healthy is to be a lean, leaf eating, organic eating, clean foods eating, exercised, busy with exercise kind of person. On top of having a good group of friends and, no negativity, no negativity. And I'm hot. So the older I've gotten, the more I've come to realize that whatever we do with our bodies doesn't dictate our spiritual health. Now, I'm saying that there's an asterisk that comes with that statement. The asterisk being, whatever's healthy for you and your body and feels good to you, I think that brings you closer to a sense of self-love. There are things we can do to our body. We can harm. I'll put a trigger warning for sure, content warning at the beginning, on the podcast notes. But there are ways that, unfortunately, people harm their own bodies. And I'm not saying there are certain things that maybe someone gets satisfaction from, or they feel is the means to some kind of end, or is something that they get pleasure from, but is actually physically harming them. That is a whole other topic I am not an expert on. So when I say that whatever feels good for you in your body is what brings you to a closer place of self-love, please know that I say that with that asterisk. I'm not delving into that other part that I'm not very expert in, okay? Because I'll acknowledge that what feels good to one person may not feel good to the next person. And just want to acknowledge that. So I've come to a point in my life where I remember growing up, my grandfather, whom I've talked about on this podcast, I've seen his apparition before, and I see his picture right over here on my altar. Beautiful photo of him, black and white, from when he was an actor. And he was a very handsome, very like muscular dude in the 50s and 60s. He looked like a movie star. And he raised me, well, not he raised me, but I grew up with hearing him say things like eat your greens and focusing so much on his body. Now, eat your greens is not a bad thing to say to a kid or to anybody, but it's just he was so focused on the body and being strong and manly and you're eating too much this, or oh, she looks this, like she looks fat, making comments like that about people and pointing to people in restaurants. I remember one time we were at a Chinese buffet and he was pointing at this man who was a large man and criticizing him. And I thought it was so mean. I mean, my 9-10-year-old self thought that is so mean. And I look back, I'm like, bro, we're both eating at the same Chinese buffet as that man is. So how are we any better according to your logic? We don't look that way, but we're eating the same shit. So it's like my grandfather had a lot of things that I'm sure he's learning about on the other side. God bless him. I love him very much. But he had some growth areas. So those are the messages I heard growing up. And he didn't associate his physical health with his religion because he was a very strict Catholic. But he did not correlate the two or have them interact with each other in any way, those two parts of his life. He just loved to be fit. And he liked the attention too, when being complimented on his body. And so I grew up with these messages, right? And I think something that I also grew up with is scientific research and news articles about obesity in the United States. Now, this is a hard subtopic because I think today there is a lot of acceptance, and rightfully so, around people of any size body. And I think that is exactly how we should be approaching this topic of bodies and body image. We shouldn't be treating someone differently just because they're larger or smaller than we are. And also, there is science that says that there are certain types of food habits and certain types of body compositions that someone can create for themselves. Like some people I know are predisposed to being obese. That can be genetic. There was a very popular PBS NewsHour, I think it was, or PBS News segment on certain people living today who have a gene that predisposes them to obesity, and it's out of their control, and it's because their ancestors suffered through a famine. It's like their bodies are trying to compensate for what their ancestors struggled from. Isn't that fascinating? And I think it was Irish ancestors during the potato famine. And they were able to trace that to today, this generation of people who struggle with obesity, and it's in their genetics. So before we judge anybody, we really need to, and it's not our business to know their history, by the way. It's not our business to know their body history or health history. And because of that, we shouldn't be judging them. Like, stay in your lane. Focus on your own body and yourself and how you feel in your own body. With that said, there are studies and there's research that shows that being of a certain size can cause issues with the heart, but there's also there are also other studies. I was listening to this podcast hosted by this actor. I ended up stopped listening to it because it got very bro-y really fast for me, and I was like, not into it. But they were talking about the healthy at every size movement, I think it's called. And this doctor was on, and he said that someone can be quote unquote overweight, but still be healthy. It's really all about the blood work and the lab work, which if a doctor says that, I mean, I'm not here to believe every doctor or whatever they say. Oh, let me rephrase that before I get in trouble with people. I go to the doctor all the time. If I'm sick, really, really sick, I don't know what to do, I go to the doctor. I rely on my doctors. I am vaccinated. I have an inhaler. I have asthma. I take care of all my health stuff with doctors, okay? What I mean to say is, yes, there are doctors who are not very ethical and find ways to just make money off of people. Absolutely, that happens. For the most part, if a doctor says something and has research to back it up, I'm going to listen. And then sometimes you just have to like, sometimes if you feel like you hear a doctor say something and you're like, huh? Like that doesn't make any sense. Then do your own research. I think that's okay. It's okay to do your own research. But as for me, it's like, I'll have a balance of do my own research, but also rely on the experts. What am I getting at? So this doctor says that, and I thought, oh, that's very interesting. And he has his own, he's a physician, and he was saying that, yeah, you can be overweight and still be healthy, but also you can be overweight and that can cause health complications. So it really just depends based on what I remember hearing, at least on the podcast. That's what I understood from the podcast. So what does this mean? What am I trying to say here? I think in the spiritual, Sella's doing her bed. She's just doing her bed, getting ready for bedtime. If you hear that scratching in the background. You're interrupting the podcast. Go to sleep. So, now she's coming over here to join us. Again. Which is okay. So, I feel like there is this image on Instagram of... It's like so many of these spiritually focused influencers on Instagram seem to all have a similar body composition and skin complexion too. And I really don't want us to stick to this idea that being spiritually healthy means you have to be at optimum body health. If you're someone who eats fast food every day, I have my opinion on what that means for your body. I have my opinion on what kind of habit that is. But I'm not here to tell you you are less connected to the divine because you eat fast food every day. If you're a smoker, now, I will say very adamantly, smoking is bad for you. It is. It is. But that doesn't mean you're less connected to the divine than I am. Doesn't mean you're less in tune with spirit than I am. I kind of bring myself back to Bible school or Bible class. Where it's like God always chose, according to the Bible, God chose imperfect people to spread his perfect message, right? Saul became Paul. Saul was not a great person. I remember, if I'm getting that right. Jesus hung out with tax collectors and prostitutes. Like, this is, who am I to judge? Who am I to judge? And God may use somebody that I, my human self, may judge, but use that person to change my life. Use that person to open me up to a new idea that is going to open my life up. And so, who am I to judge somebody for how they treat their own body? Of course, if someone is treating their own body in a way that I know is going to harm them, I'm going to try and intervene to save them from harm. But if it's not harming them or not harming me, what they're doing, what is it to me? That's their own relationship with their body. That is their business. So yeah, I feel like something we need to get rid of in the spiritual industry. When maybe it's changing and maybe I haven't really caught up with things, but I feel like there is still a tinge of, especially on Instagram, if you're hot on Instagram, like you're a hot person, I hate to say it, but you're more likely to like get all the likes. And it's like, I don't want people to get the idea that to be successful as a spiritual practitioner, that you have to like look hot, that you have to look good. Does that sell? Yeah, it does sell in this world. It sells in this country, in this culture, but it's not what's important. Especially, I mean, if you're a model, that's one thing. If that's your business, is being a model or a sex worker, of course, that's part of your thing, your body, right? But if you're practicing, doing a spiritual practice and want to preach, I hate to use the word preach, but share, spread, preach a message about loving yourself and getting more connected with yourself and with the divine, your body doesn't really matter. Of course, you want to look presentable, you want to look professional. Those are things we can change and control. Yeah, we can lose weight, gain weight, I know. But I'm talking about things we can easily control. Makeup, the shirt we wear, how we do our hair, if we have access to a shower, how clean we look. Those are things we can easily control. Things like body weight take time. There's a timeline to those things if we want to change them. So yeah, look presentable, look professional. Make yourself look a way that you're proud of it. I don't care if you want to wear a feather on your head. You do you, and you do you in a way that makes you feel good about yourself. And the right people will follow you, or the right people will gravitate towards you, whether on Instagram or in life outside of Instagram. I feel like I'm all over the place in this podcast episode. Pardon the cough. But I think it's important. I think as somebody who has struggled with body image, I have definitely sometimes I can definitely say that I have sometimes told myself that for me being physically healthy and physically fit or physically functional will help me get to a spiritual level that I wasn't at before. And when I say it out loud, it sounds really ridiculous, but it's really something I have thought of in the past subconsciously, especially with yoga. I love doing yoga, and yoga for me, I do it for the purpose of like physical health and fitness and flexibility. And I also do it as a form of like, it's like meditative exercise for me. So it's double whammy. It hits on two things at once for me in my life: physicality and spirituality. And I think there was a time when I would feel like in yoga, oh, I feel physically good, so I am spiritually good. Like, not necessarily. I can do all the yoga I want. If my intention is not to heal my inner soul through yoga, then what's the point of it? And not just through yoga. That could be anything in life. If me lifting weights at the gym, I mean, I don't necessarily think of my higher power when I'm at the gym. And yes, Sella is scratching her bed again, doing her bed. I don't think of God. I don't think of spirituality very much when I'm at the gym, outside of listening to spiritual podcasts. But honestly, like if I do everything in my life with an intention of help me to realize myself more, help me to come to a better sense of self-love, help me to see the God within myself in everything I do. If I set that intention at the beginning of my day, I don't necessarily have to think about it for the whole day as I'm doing everything in my day. But if I set that intention and let that spill into different parts of my day, because I set the intention at the beginning of the day, I think that changes everything. I think it changes how we relate to our body, how we do the activities that we do. And so I think that's where there's a fine balance between spiritual fitness, physical fitness. Because physically, we are in this body like it's a vehicle. I'm going to steal a metaphor that Fernando Marron, who has been a mentor of mine before, and who's a great psychic medium, he said this in his podcast recently. I think it's called Unfiltered, his podcast. He said, well, he compared doing a mediumship reading to being in a car with different souls, different people. So I'm going to kind of steal his idea, but do another twist on it. For the sake of this episode, our bodies are our vehicles. And let's say you have a car and you want the car to get you where you want to go to. You don't have to really take care of the car superficially, but you need to take care of the engine, right? So the way the car looks really isn't so important unless we want to impress people or unless we want to feel good about the way the car looks. And that's okay to feel good about the way the car looks on the outside. But the most important thing is that engine has to run and has to get you from point A to point B. So with our bodies, it's okay to care about how we look. It's okay to care about our fitness level. If we want to feel strong, look strong. We want to look in the mirror and feel good about ourselves. Whatever that means to any person, whether it's strength, whether it's size, whatever it is, doesn't matter. I said what I said just now because that's how I think. I want to look strong in the mirror. But to the next person, maybe they want to look just lean or they want to feel thin in a way that's healthy for them. Maybe then the person after that wants to be of larger size and feel good looking in the mirror, seeing that. And that's okay too. It's okay. And what are we doing about the engine? What are we doing about the parts of us that help us run our engine day to day? So I think it's a very interesting balance to strike. there are some people who in history, I guess philosophers, it's like they want to not think about the human body. They want to focus purely on the soul. Like the body just doesn't mean anything. And I think that's just such an extreme point of view. Just as much as it is an extreme perspective to focus solely on the body and not enough on who we are. I want to say on our soul, but for those who don't believe in a soul, just on who you are, which is the essence of your soul. But for atheists, who you are. For the rest of us who believe in something spiritual, our soul. I think it's not healthy to get yourself from point A to point B without a car when you have a car to use. I mean, you could walk the whole time. You could walk for 200 days if you want to, but why not use the car? It's right there for you to use. It's a gift to have the car. It's given to you. Now, cars are rarely given to you unless you're a very lucky teenager. But you get my metaphor. It's also unhealthy to be in the car and totally not take care of the engine on your way to point B. To just disregard anything that sounds like it's not working. Any clinks, any pings, any check engine lights. So just keep going. You're going to just exhaust the car. Check oil light. You don't change the oil. You don't refresh it. You don't maintain the health of the car. It's not going to work for you. So I'm somewhere in this middle of like striking a balance between these two perspectives. So that's what I wanted to talk about today. I don't know if you're going to get anything out of this episode. I feel like I talked in a whole bunch of circles. I ran in circles. But it's been on my mind recently for a while now to do an episode on this topic. Because the last way I'll put this is I want to encourage you to think beyond how you look to determine how spiritually fit you are. Those are two different things. They're related in the way that they relate for you. I want to encourage you to focus way more on how you feel in your body. How do you feel? Like if your stomach is hurting and it hurts after you eat something and it's something that you notice over and over that you're eating that thing every week and your stomach is in pain, it's not a judgment on, oh, you shouldn't eat that because it's bad for you. No one should be telling you that. You should be the one noticing that yourself. And if you find that that thing is not good for you to eat, then you have your next step. You have your hints as to what not to eat. But that's because something is making you not feel good in your body, not because someone's telling you you look like this. That's not okay. That's not okay. So rather than focus so much on how you look, think about how you feel. That's easier said than done because I look at how I look all the time. I have a mirror here. I have a mirror in my restroom. There's mirrors at the gym. And it's something I want to work on. I want to work on not worrying so much what I look like. Once in a while, I look in the mirror and I like what I see. And that's enough. That should be enough. I don't want to get obsessive about it. So I'm curious to hear from all of you if you have your own experience in striking this balance between caring about the physical, but also not caring at the same time. A way that's healthy, like a healthy relationship with your body. And how you feel that has improved or not related at all to your spiritual lifestyle, your spiritual health. And I don't want to sit here and debunk, like if someone says, hey, me eating clean foods and exercising has helped me get closer to my spiritual well-being. I'm not here to debunk that. I'm not here to say that that is not valid. What I'm here to say is that is amazing. And I get it. But that should not be the rule for everybody because everybody's different and everyone's experiences with food is very different. Everybody's triggers related to their bodies, related to attraction and their bodies, related to food and their bodies, beverages. It's all different person to person. What could be healthy for one person in terms of habits, daily habits, or food and beverage consumption may not be healthy to the next person. And what results from someone knowing that about themselves and then putting into practice a diet, and I don't mean a diet like a fad diet, like lose 30 pounds in 30 days. I'm talking about a daily diet, like a diet for life that works for somebody. Because momentary diets, they're not long lasting, as we know. Whatever diet, whatever regimen results from someone having that awareness of what works or doesn't work for them, that's their business. And it should be up to nobody to judge, and nobody to judge from a spiritual perspective either. That's my opinion. My opinion may be wrong, and I'm going to quote, well, it works for me though. My opinion works for me. I'm going to quote somebody that I used to know, and I'm going to say an explicit word like I never have before, right? He used to tell me, opinions are like assholes. Everybody has one. I know that was crass, but I think it's a brilliant, brilliant saying. Sorry if I offended you, but I think it's a brilliant truth. I want to clear something up because they said something about doctors. I'm just a little bit, it's just on my mind still. I just want to clarify that, especially, actually, it's good that I say this regardless of what I said before about doctors. Please refer to your physician, talk to your doctor or your medical professional that you refer to about anything that concerned you in this podcast that you want to think about for yourself. Do not rely on my opinion for medical advice. Do not rely on my opinion for next steps for a food regimen or prescriptions to use. I have seen a nutritionist in my life. I've seen a personal trainer who's not a medical professional, but I think you get the idea of what I'm saying. Talk to experts in your life. Don't just rely on my words. And when I said before that there are some doctors I will not listen to, it's because I have seen doctors in my life that I know just wanted my money. And they were usually physicians. I was trying to find primary care physicians. So like in any profession, there are bad psychics. Am I going to say all psychics don't listen to psychics? No. There are some bad doctors. Should we not listen to doctors? Incorrect. There are just some bad apples. So I usually rely on the expertise of doctors in the medical profession. And I think it's such a blessing that we have had science helping us understand. And science doesn't always get it right. There are things that science used to say 100 years ago that today would be extremely racist. So it is a growing, learning field. And we just like as a human being, we have to let ourselves grow and learn from our mistakes. Every part of life does that too, including science. But I consider it a blessing like science helped us have penicillin. What a blessing that is to have penicillin, right? And so I'm not of the camp of, or that likes to say that I'd rather go with my herbologist than with my primary care physician, or I'd rather go with my psychics than with my therapist. No. I want to integrate all of it together and do what works for me in a way that doesn't harm myself. And that's what I hope for you too. So that's the note I want to leave this on. Please see your medical professional. Seek medical expertise regarding anything having to do with food, your food consumption, your health, lab work, psychology, or your mental health. Please refer to medical experts. I just want to clear that up. And I truly mean it. I'm not saying it to CYA or CM, cover my ass, I really mean it. You all know that I've said stuff like that before in my earlier podcast episodes where I, especially with, I won't get into it, but I've said that before about medical professionals. So thank you for bearing with me. This was quite an interesting episode. I maybe should have planned or written out what I wanted to say. Like I said in the first part of the episode, I'm not in a headspace to do readings, and I think that may give you an indication of what headspace I'm in right now in the way I'm talking in this episode. I feel like it's a little all over the place. But let me know what you think. If you like this episode, leave a review and leave a comment on Instagram. Send me a DM. Send me an email. And if you have any thoughts yourself about spiritual fitness and physical fitness, I want to hear what your thoughts are. And if you disagree with me, that's fine. I would love to hear it too. I'll read anything I receive on the podcast as long as it's not disrespectful. Thank you for listening, and I will chat with you next time. Bye. If you have a question or topic you want me to cover on Third Eyesight, head to my website, juanfranciscospirit.com/contact, and send a message my way. If you really enjoyed this episode, leave a review wherever you listen. I'd really appreciate it.